Luke chapter 22, verses 24 through 30. We are looking at the disciples disputing among themselves during this Last Supper on who is the greatest. Now, it's important to note that this conversation happens multiple times throughout the disciples' time with Jesus. It's already happened once in Luke. In the other Gospels, we see a similar thing showing up with John and James' mom asking Jesus for a place at his right and left hand. But this text makes us aware that it also happened during this last meal together, which is especially sad. But nevertheless, the teaching, once again, is important, so let's go through it. A dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. We're always wondering who the GOAT is, who's the greatest, who's the best, who's the highest, who's the most valuable among us. And even among them, even among the disciples, this is the case. You're having this meal with Jesus. He's just said, "This is my body broken for you. This is the cup of my blood." And they start fighting about who's the best. This is, by the way, how they handled the second time that Jesus revealed that he was going to die on the cross, or die for them, suffer and be rejected, all this stuff. They immediately started arguing about who was the greatest back then as well. So we're seeing a repeat of what took place earlier in the book. And immediately we can begin to feel ourselves in their scenario, because even if we don't say it out loud, who's the best, we're always kind of thinking about these things in our own head. And Jesus said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors." So this little statement here in the middle immediately shows us in what way these guys are thinking about what it means to be the greatest. Oh, sorry, that all disappeared. 1 second. Let's rebuild that real fast. But they are thinking about what it means to be the greatest, and their minds are already going to this kind of authority figure in the kings of the Gentiles. And the key thing to pay attention to here is the way in which these guys kind of operate in these positions of authority. They lord it over others. They lord their authority over others. They exercise authority over others. And they give themselves a title of benefactors. So lording it over, first thing to pay attention to, lording it over is I'm king and I'm showing you all the time how, through the exercise of authority, making you do whatever I want you to do, and all the while I call myself your benefactor. I say this is a public service. This is something that we see in our own country with people who are supposed to be in public service, but they love exercising authority over the people they are given authority over. This is the world's way of operating. It's to exercise authority while patting yourself on the back. And so when we think about the greatest, immediately we just have to recognize that we have a tendency to see this on the world's terms. And so Jesus says, but, really important that we see that word, but, you are not to be like that. Like what? Like these Gentiles, not like that. That's not what we're doing. Instead, and we'll go, hope you see this connection here, but instead, but you're not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. The key piece in this is this word like, should be like the one who serves. This word like here is important because it's not saying that the greatest is. So that is not, Jesus is not saying that the greatest is the youngest. He's not saying the greatest is the one who serves. In a moment, he's going to point out that he is clearly the greatest among them, and he is serving, but that doesn't necessarily mean like that they should see him as the servant. But what Jesus is saying is that Gentile greatness up here, or let's just call it the world's greatness, versus true greatness, which is what we're seeing here. True greatness. The greatest among you. If you're truly great, rather than lording it over others, you become the youngest. And in America, this isn't as much of an issue, but in societies where age is a big deal, the youngest is always the bottom of the totem pole. That would have been the case in Greek society. And if it's not the youngest who's on the bottom of the totem pole, it's the servant in the room. That's the person who's on the bottom of the totem pole. And when Jesus says that they should be like, he's not saying that the greatest person is actually the youngest person, or the one that's in charge here is actually the servant. But he's saying that the behavior, the attitude, the way that this person lives is as if it is like being the youngest. It is like being the one who serves. That's true greatness. And which immediately kind of makes us wonder, well, do we want that sort of greatness anyway? Do we actually want greatness, or do we want to lord it over others? Do we want greatness, or do we want to have this power? Do we want greatness, or do we want to think of ourselves as great without actually being great? This is this worldly kind of concept of great. And when we're faced with true greatness, real greatness, the greatest among you, the one who rules, do we still want this? And Jesus is now going to kind of prove this by his own action. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Now, the answer here is clearly the one at the table. The one at the table is greater than the one who serves, without a doubt. But, is it not the one at the table? So, by the way, sorry, that but was not in the right spot. Jesus answers the question. The one at the table is greater. He makes that very clear. He gives us the answer. Here's the but. But I am among you as one who serves. Jesus is really clear. This is his table. His table. But I am among you as one who serves. Now, not only is Jesus serving as the lamb to take away our sins, but don't forget that there was also a moment tonight of foot washing. Jesus literally picked up, the towel and washed his disciples' feet. He is being like the youngest. He is being like the one who serves, even though it's his table, even though he's the greatest one. So Jesus is the exact opposite of the earthly ones who think that they're so awesome. They call themselves benefactors, but they don't really do it. Jesus, however, does. He really is the Savior. He really is the servant. He really does save the world. And he's the greatest. And so he's just redefining greatness for us. Such an important message, such an important lesson before they go out into the world to go do kingdom work. Because Jesus does not want them to go do all this kingdom work competing for the who's the best spot, who's the greatest apostle. All of that is going to be junk, and it's going to totally ruin what they're really trying to do, which is be servants of all. And so this lesson is super important, and it precedes this gift of the kingdom in these next verses. He says, "You are those who have stood by me in my trials." Wow, what a compliment to give to the disciples. You are those who have stood by me in my trials. They have suffered with Jesus. Reminded of those promises. We'll rise with him if we suffer with him. So they've stood by Jesus in his trials, and they're rewarded for it. I confer on you a kingdom. Whoa, that's amazing. A kingdom? We're getting a kingdom? What kind of kingdom? The answer, just as my Father conferred one on me. and this is important to understand. How does Jesus get this kingdom from God? Well, God gives him authority, but then there's this work to go and establish it. And so the same thing is inherent in us. We've been given the kingdom of heaven, but it's also our job to establish this kingdom, to go out and share the gospel and build the kingdom of earth here, build the kingdom of heaven here on the earth, one soul at a time. And we can do this because the authority in heaven has been given to Jesus, and Jesus has shared that authority with us, or Jesus with us. And so we have this conference of a kingdom, this incredible gift here in verse 29. There's so much here that motivates us to go and share the gospel. And if you wanted just all of this in much more clarity, obviously Matthew 28 would be the place to go there. Matthew 28. And this kingdom, though, that's being given, right? They're wondering once again who's the greatest. Watch Jesus pull this concept from above down here into verse 30. So that, right? You're being given a kingdom so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So this gift of a kingdom is going to lead to what? Eating and drinking at my table, not here on the earth, not in this setting right here, but in my kingdom, in the fullness of his kingdom. This is huge. I mean, when you're talking about the gift of greatness, what could be better than to eat and drink at Jesus's table in the kingdom? So this is like the greatest honor. This is the greatest honor that they could conceive of. And that's not it, right? It gets better. Sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. By the way, I think this really is just speaking to the 12 tribes of Israel. I don't think Jesus is speaking to the entire church. You're free to disagree. But I think he's talking about specifically the nation of Israel. That the disciples of Jesus are going to have a specific role. Not like all disciples, but the 12 are going to have a specific role in judging the nation of Israel. But they were arguing earlier, who's the greatest? Who's the greatest? Who's the greatest? What's Jesus's point? Guys, serve others, because I am giving you a kingdom that my Father has given to me, and I am going to elevate you to such positions that you can't even imagine. The greatness that Jesus offers is so much greater than any great position that we can conceive of. And so we kind of get this message, like, stop fighting, right, for greatness. Instead, serve, right? And if we do that, then we will receive greatness beyond our imagination. That's what we're seeing in this for the disciples, is that the greatness that Christ has for them is beyond what they could even begin to consider with what they're fighting about down here. So what should we do? We should be servants. We should be servants of all. That is exactly how we should be living. That's what Christ modeled for us. Let's pursue true greatness, and let's let Jesus give us any position of honor or authority that we might try to get on our own. Let it all come from him.